Tonight, you'll journey into one of the greatest stories ever told, a kingdom ruled by fear, a king who executed every bride by sunrise, and one extraordinary woman who dared to face death with nothing but a story. As you relax and drift into sleep, let the timeless world of the Arabian Nights carry you through mystery, magic, and the 1001 nights that changed a broken heart forever.
The bride who chose death. The palace stood silent beneath a sky washed with silver moonlight, its towering walls hiding a sorrow so deep that even the wind seemed afraid to speak. Every servant moved with lowered eyes. Every torch burned quietly along the endless corridors. They all knew what the coming sunrise would bring because it had happened before, again and again. Each new dawn claimed another young queen. No songs echoed through the royal halls anymore. No laughter lingered in the gardens. Hope had become something people remembered rather than felt. At the center of this kingdom sat King Schahryar, a ruler whose name was spoken only in whispers. Long ago he had loved with all his heart. Then betrayal shattered that heart into pieces too sharp to mend. From that day forward he made a terrible vow. Each evening he would marry a new bride. Each morning she would be led away to die, ensuring no woman could ever betray him again. The kingdom mourned in silence, powerless to stop the endless cycle. Then, on one unforgettable evening, a young woman stepped forward. Her name was Scheherazade. She was no ordinary daughter of the royal court. She had filled her mind with stories gathered from travelers, scholars, sailors, poets, and wandering dreamers. She understood something few others did. A sword could conquer a kingdom, but a story could conquer a wounded soul. When she announced that she wished to marry the king, her father stared at her in disbelief. His voice trembled as he begged her to choose life instead. She only smiled. "Someone must end this," she whispered. That night, dressed as a bride walking willingly towards her own fate, Scheherazade entered the king's chamber. The silence between them felt heavier than stone. Before the night grew old, she bowed her head and made one final request. "My king," she said softly, "allow me to tell one story before the sun returns." Schahryar nodded, and with that single breath, the first tale began. The kingdom remembered Schahryar as a powerful ruler, but few remembered the man he had been before grief entered his heart. He was once a brother, a friend, and a husband who believed love was the strongest force in the world. Then came the betrayal that destroyed everything he trusted. The woman he loved revealed a secret that left him feeling like a stranger in his own palace. From that night, kindness became weakness in his eyes, and every smile looked like a hidden lie. Yet far away from the king's anger, a different kind of world was growing inside Scheherazade. As a child, she spent countless evenings beside ancient books, listening to travelers describe distant deserts, forgotten cities, and mysteries buried beneath the sands. She collected stories the way others collected jewels. To her, every tale carried a hidden truth. She believed people often refused to hear advice, but they would listen to a story. Now, standing before the wounded king, she carried those memories with her. She did not see a monster sitting on the throne. She saw a man trapped inside his own pain. As the first night unfolded, Scheherazade opened the door to another world. Her voice carried the king away from the cold palace walls and into a land of merchants, spirits, and impossible choices. The first tale began with a question that had no easy answer, a mystery waiting beneath every word. Outside, the kingdom remained silent. Everyone waited for the morning that would decide her fate. But inside the chamber, something unexpected happened. For the first time in many years, Schahryar listened. And somewhere between the beginning of a story and the arrival of dawn, a small crack appeared in the darkness surrounding his heart. Yet neither of them understood that this fragile moment would become the beginning of a journey where stories could heal wounds that swords and power had only made deeper. The first story began beneath a burning desert sun, where endless golden sands stretched beyond the horizon like an ocean without waves. Scheherazade spoke of a wealthy merchant who traveled between distant lands, carrying precious goods and dreams of returning home safely. He had seen many wonders in his life, but nothing prepared him for the secret waiting in the silence of the desert. One evening, exhausted from his journey, the merchant stopped beside a lonely tree. As the night wind moved across the sand, he made a choice that seemed small and harmless. But that single moment awakened something ancient. From the shadows emerged a powerful spirit, a being older than kingdoms and forgotten by generations of men. Its voice shook the earth as it demanded a terrible price: the merchant's life. Fear surrounded him like the desert darkness. He begged for mercy, promising that he had not intended to cause harm. But the ancient force remained unmoved. The merchant was given only a short time before his fate would be decided. As he waited beneath the stars, believing his final hour had arrived, 3 mysterious travelers appeared. Each carried the weight of a different life. Each carried a story filled with sorrow, sacrifice, and impossible choices. They offered something unusual: not gold, not weapons, stories. Stories that could change the way even the most powerful beings saw the world. The spirit listened as the travelers revealed their secrets, and slowly, something strange began to happen. The anger in the air weakened. The certainty of death became uncertain. Inside the palace, Shahryar found himself leaning closer. He had expected a simple tale, something to pass the hours before morning. Instead, he discovered a question he could not ignore. Could words succeed where force had failed? Could a story change the heart of someone who believed mercy was a weakness? As the merchant's fate remained suspended between life and death, Scheherazade continued weaving the next thread of the tale, leaving the king and the kingdom waiting for the answer. As the nights passed, Scheherazade carried the king farther away from the walls of his palace and into worlds where the impossible felt real. One evening, her voice changed. The quiet mystery of the desert disappeared, replaced by the sound of crashing waves and distant winds. She began the tale of Sinbad, a man who looked beyond the safety of familiar shores and wondered what secrets waited beyond the horizon. Sinbad was not driven only by wealth. Deep inside him lived a restless curiosity, a desire to discover what no one else had seen. His ships crossed endless oceans where maps became meaningless, and every new island carried a hidden danger. Some islands appeared like paradise, filled with beauty no human had imagined. Others revealed nightmares hidden beneath peaceful skies. Sinbad encountered creatures larger than mountains, strange kingdoms lost from memory, and dangers that tested not only his courage but his ability to survive. On one journey, he discovered a world where nature itself seemed impossible. A giant bird carried him toward places beyond human understanding. On another, he faced creatures that made him question whether he would ever see his homeland again. But every escape left a mark on him. Sinbad returned from each adventure carrying more than treasure. He carried lessons carved from fear, loneliness, and wonder. He learned that the world was far greater than any person could understand, and that every unknown path held both danger and beauty. Inside the royal chamber, Shahryar listened in silence. The king who once counted the hours until dawn now found himself forgetting the passing of time. The execution that had once been certain began to feel strangely distant. For a moment, he was no longer a ruler surrounded by fear.
He was simply a man standing beside a ship, staring into an endless sea. But beyond the next wave, another mystery waited. Another journey. Another secret hidden where no one had dared to look. And as Scheherazade continued, the king wondered what other worlds existed beyond the edge of the known. On another night beneath the palace stars, Scheherazade opened a new chapter of wonder. Her voice carried the king away from endless oceans and into a forgotten city where narrow streets twisted between ancient walls, and secrets slept beneath layers of dust. There lived a young man with little wealth and even fewer chances. The world looked past him as if he were invisible. Yet hidden inside him was a dream larger than his circumstances. He imagined a life where he would no longer be ignored, where his name would finally be remembered. Then fate placed something extraordinary in his hands. An old lamp buried beneath the earth. At first, it seemed worthless. A simple object covered in dirt and forgotten by time. But when its secret was revealed, the young man discovered a power beyond anything he had ever imagined. With a single command, impossible things became reality.
Gold appeared. Palaces rose. Doors that had always been closed suddenly opened. The world that once rejected him now bowed before him. But with every new gift came a new temptation. The young man began to wonder if he truly controlled the power, or if the power was slowly controlling him. Those around him changed as quickly as his fortune. Friends became jealous. Strangers became loyal only because of what he possessed. Even his own heart began to forget the person he had been before the lamp. Scheherazade's voice softened as she described his struggle. Because the greatest danger was never the magic hidden inside the lamp. It was the belief that power could fill the emptiness within a person. Across the chamber, Shahryar listened carefully. He did not notice it at first, but the story was not only about a young man and a mysterious treasure. It was about every person who had ever allowed pain, pride, or fear to control their choices. The king stared into the flickering candlelight, wondering if power had truly made him stronger, or simply hidden his wounds from the world. And as the lamp's secret began to reveal its final cost, another question waited in the darkness. What happens when a person finally gets everything they ever wanted? The next night, Scheherazade led the king into a world where shadows hid secrets and ordinary people discovered extraordinary fortunes. Beneath a quiet moonlit sky lived a poor woodcutter who spent his days among the trees, carrying heavy bundles home just to provide for his family. He owned almost nothing. Yet he still held something many wealthy men had lost. A humble heart. One day, while working deep in the forest, he heard strange voices echoing through the trees. Curious but cautious, he followed the sound and discovered a group of thieves gathered before a hidden mountain entrance. They spoke a secret phrase, and the impossible happened. The stone walls opened. Inside was a treasure beyond imagination. Gold filled the darkness. Precious jewels reflected like captured stars. For a moment, the woodcutter stood frozen, unable to believe what his eyes had found. But he soon realized that such a discovery carried a danger greater than poverty. Greed. The thieves who guarded the treasure trusted only themselves, but even among criminals, betrayal waited quietly. Each person wanted more than the others. Each believed they deserved the greatest share. Their desire for wealth slowly became their weakness. The woodcutter survived not because he was stronger or richer. He survived because he understood something they had forgotten. A clever mind could defeat a powerful enemy. As the story unfolded, Shahryar listened with growing attention. He had spent years believing that justice belonged only to those with authority. Kings decided. Soldiers obeyed. The weak had little power against the strong. But this tale showed him something different. Sometimes wisdom could stand against force. Sometimes kindness could succeed where fear failed. The king remained silent, watching Scheherazade as if searching for the hidden meaning behind her words. Was she only telling stories, or was she showing him a truth he had refused to see? Outside the palace, the moon continued its journey across the sky. And inside the chamber, another secret waited to be uncovered. As the nights grew longer, Scheherazade's stories began to change. The laughter and wonder of distant adventures slowly gave way to forgotten kingdoms, abandoned cities, and places where silence carried the weight of centuries. She spoke of lands that once shined brighter than the stars, where magnificent palaces stood above golden streets and rulers believed their power would last forever. But one by one, those kingdoms disappeared. Some were destroyed by their own arrogance. Others were swallowed by mysteries no one could explain. Behind every fallen city was a warning. A secret. A choice that could never be undone. The heroes who walked through these forgotten places discovered that danger did not always come from beasts or dark magic. Sometimes the greatest threats looked like ordinary people. They wore beautiful clothes, spoke gentle words, and smiled while hiding the deepest darkness within their hearts. Scheherazade told of enchanted halls where voices whispered from empty rooms, ancient prophecies written before the birth of kings, and travelers who searched for answers buried beneath the ruins of forgotten civilizations. But with every story, Shahryar felt something unfamiliar growing inside him. Doubt. He began to wonder whether he had spent years fighting enemies that did not exist while ignoring the darkness growing within himself. Yet outside the royal chamber, not everyone welcomed the change. The king's ministers watched carefully. They noticed that the ruler who once demanded silence now waited eagerly for another story. They feared that Scheherazade's words were becoming more powerful than their own advice. They warned him. They told him she was manipulating him. They reminded him of the promise he had made long ago. But Shahryar said nothing. Because deep inside, he knew something had changed. The stories were not weakening him. They were forcing him to look at the parts of himself he had buried. And as Scheherazade opened the next tale beneath the glow of another midnight sky, one question remained hidden in the darkness. Who was truly afraid of these stories, the monsters inside them, or the king sitting quietly beside them? With each passing night, Scheherazade opened doors to worlds where magic flowed like rivers and dreams could become reality. But beneath the beauty of enchanted kingdoms and mysterious powers, there was always a hidden cost waiting in the shadows. She told of genies who granted impossible wishes, sorcerers who searched for forbidden knowledge, and ordinary people who suddenly found themselves holding power far beyond their understanding. At first, every wish seemed like a blessing. A poor man wished for riches and watched his empty home transform into a palace. A forgotten soul wished to become powerful and finally gained the respect he had always wanted. A desperate traveler wished for another chance at life. But slowly, they discovered a truth no one could escape. A wish could change the world around you. It could not always change the person inside you. The gifts they received began testing their hearts. Wealth created suspicion. Power created loneliness. Revenge created new wounds. The things they desired most became the very things that threatened to destroy them. As Shahryar listened, he found himself thinking about his own choices. He had wished for a world where betrayal could never hurt him again. He had built walls around his heart and called them protection. But perhaps those walls had also trapped him. Night after night, Scheherazade watched the king's expression change. The anger in his eyes was no longer as sharp. The silence between them no longer felt like a threat. Yet she knew time was moving forward. The stories that had protected her life could not continue forever. Sooner or later, dawn would arrive. Sooner or later, the king would have to decide whether he still wanted revenge or whether he was ready to let go of the pain that had ruled him for so long. As another tale reached its most dangerous moment, the palace grew quiet. A wish was about to be fulfilled. But no one knew whether it would bring salvation, or reveal the final price of wanting everything. The nights had become something no one in the kingdom could have imagined. What began as a simple story told by a frightened bride had transformed into a journey through countless worlds, where every tale carried a hidden meaning waiting to be discovered. At first, Shahryar believed each story stood alone. A merchant's fate. A sailor's adventure. A treasure hidden beneath the earth. A wish that changed a person's life. But slowly, he began noticing something unusual. The same questions appeared again and again. What happens when pain controls a person? What happens when power replaces compassion? What happens when someone loses the ability to trust? The characters were different, the kingdoms were different, and the dangers were different. Yet beneath every story was the same struggle. A battle between the darkness inside the heart and the possibility of becoming something better. Shahryar began remembering moments from his own life. The betrayal that wounded him. The anger that followed. The fear that convinced him he had to punish others before they could hurt him. For the first time, he saw himself not as the victim of his past, but as someone who had allowed that past to control his future. Scheherazade never accused him. She never demanded that he change. She simply placed mirrors in front of him, one story at a time, until he could no longer look away. Outside the chamber, the kingdom still waited anxiously for the morning. Many believed nothing had changed. They believed the king was still the same man who had ruled through fear. But inside those walls, something invisible was happening. A heart that had been closed for years was beginning to open. And yet, the greatest test had not arrived. Because understanding the truth was only the beginning. Soon, Shahryar would have to decide whether he was brave enough to live by it. As Scheherazade prepared to tell another story beneath the endless night sky, one mystery remained. Were all these tales simply entertainment? Or had every single story been leading him toward the truth he was most afraid to face? Outside the royal chamber, the first signs of morning waited beyond the horizon. The guards stood in their usual positions. The servants moved carefully through the halls. Everyone knew what sunrise had always meant. A decision. A life taken. But this morning was different. For the first time, Shahryar did not look toward the coming dawn with certainty. He sat in silence, carrying the weight of every story Scheherazade had told and every truth he had tried to ignore. The anger that once burned inside him still existed. The memories still hurt. The betrayal that changed him had not disappeared like a forgotten dream. But now there was something else. A question. Was revenge truly protecting him? Or was it keeping him trapped inside the same moment that had destroyed him? Across the room, Scheherazade continued speaking. Her voice remained calm, but beneath her words was the knowledge that her time might finally be ending. She had entered this palace knowing the risk. She had faced every night believing it could be her last. Yet she never stopped. Because somewhere along the way, she was no longer telling stories only to survive. She was telling them because she believed even a wounded heart could remember how to feel. The final tale she began carried the weight of everything that came before. It spoke of choices, forgiveness, and the courage required to release the pain someone has carried for too long. Shahryar listened without moving. Every word reached a place inside him that no command, no treasure, and no victory had ever touched. Then silence returned. The story had reached its most important moment. The same moment where every previous tale had left him wanting more. But this time, the question was not about a merchant, a sailor, or a forgotten kingdom. It was about him. As the first light of morning touched the palace walls, everyone waited. Would this dawn bring another tragedy? Or would it become the first dawn of a different future? The answer rested in the heart of a king who had finally begun to understand what he had lost. Section 11, the story was never about magic. For 1,000 nights, Shahryar believed he was listening to stories about distant lands, mysterious creatures, and impossible wonders. But now, as silence filled the chamber, he finally understood. The greatest magic had never been hidden inside a lamp. It had never lived in a forgotten city or a treasure buried beneath the earth. It had been present in every word Scheherazade spoke. Every story had carried a piece of him. The lonely kings had reflected his sorrow. Was revenge truly protecting him? Or was it keeping him trapped inside the same moment that had destroyed him? Across the room, Scheherazade continued speaking. Her voice remained calm, but beneath her words was the knowledge that her time might finally be ending. She had entered this palace knowing the risk. She had faced every night believing it could be her last. Yet she never stopped. Because somewhere along the way, she was no longer telling stories only to survive. She was telling them because she believed even a wounded heart could remember how to feel. The final tale she began carried the weight of everything that came before. It spoke of choices, forgiveness, and the courage required to release the pain someone has carried for too long. Shahryar listened without moving. Every word reached a place inside him that no command, no treasure, and no victory had ever touched. Then silence returned. The story had reached its most important moment. The same moment where every previous tale had left him wanting more. But this time, the question was not about a merchant, a sailor, or a forgotten kingdom. It was about him. As the first light of morning touched the palace walls, everyone waited. Would this dawn bring another tragedy? Or would it become the first dawn of a different future? The answer rested in the heart of a king who had finally begun to understand what he had lost. Section 11, the story was never about magic. For 1,000 nights, Shahryar believed he was listening to stories about distant lands, mysterious creatures, and impossible wonders. But now, as silence filled the chamber, he finally understood. The greatest magic had never been hidden inside a lamp. It had never lived in a forgotten city or a treasure buried beneath the earth. It had been present in every word Scheherazade spoke. Every story had carried a piece of him. The lonely kings had reflected his sorrow. The betrayed lovers had carried his memories. The angry rulers had shown him the danger of allowing pain to become a prison. The characters who found mercy had revealed a path he thought he had lost forever. Scheherazade had never tried to defeat him. She had never raised a weapon against his cruelty. Instead, she gave him something far more powerful. A chance to see himself. Night after night, she placed his fears into the hands of fictional heroes and allowed him to discover the answer without feeling attacked. She showed him that a person could be wounded without becoming cruel. That strength did not come from causing fear, but from having the courage to forgive. The king looked at the woman before him and realized something that changed everything. She had entered the palace expecting to lose her life. But somehow, she had given him back his. The throne, the armies, and the riches of his kingdom had never repaired the emptiness inside him. Yet simple words spoken in the darkness had reached a place that power never could. Shahryar finally understood why stories survived across generations. They did not force people to change. They invited them. They allowed hearts to transform without shame, allowing even the most broken souls to find their way back. And as the first light of a new morning touched the palace, the king faced the greatest choice of his life. Would he remain the man created by his pain? Or would he become the man his heart had always wanted to be? Section 12, the 1001st Dawn. For the first time in many years, sunrise arrived without fear. The golden light touched the palace walls, the gardens, and the streets below, but nothing felt the same. The people who once waited for another tragedy now waited for something they had almost forgotten. Hope. Inside the royal chamber, Shahryar stood before Scheherazade in silence. The man who once allowed anger to rule every decision finally understood the true cost of his actions. The lives lost could never be returned, and the pain of the past could never be erased. But the future was still waiting. With a heavy heart, the king ended the cruel tradition that had haunted his kingdom. No more innocent lives would be taken. No more families would wake beneath the shadow of fear. The kingdom slowly began to heal. And beside him stood Scheherazade, the woman who had entered the palace knowing she might never leave. She had not defeated the king with armies or rebellion. She had done something far more difficult. She reminded him that he was still human. The stories she told continued to travel far beyond the palace walls. Tales of brave sailors crossing endless seas, young dreamers discovering impossible treasures, mysterious cities lost beneath the sands, and ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges passed from one generation to another. Years became centuries. Kingdoms rose and disappeared. Great rulers were forgotten. But the stories remained. Because stories carry something no sword can destroy and no empire can control. They carry memories, wisdom, dreams, and the deepest emotions of humanity. The greatest magic was never found in a hidden lamp, a powerful spell, or an enchanted kingdom. It was found in the simple act of one person telling another person a story. A story that could open a closed heart. A story that could bring light into darkness. A story that could remind someone they were more than their mistakes. And so, beneath countless nights and endless stars, the legend of Scheherazade lived on. Because long after palaces crumble and names disappear into history, the stories we leave behind become the voices that continue to speak when we are gone.
As the first light of dawn touches the horizon, our journey through the Arabian Nights comes to an end. If these timeless stories brought you peace, wonder, or restful sleep, let them stay with you long after tonight. Sleep well, and remember, the greatest magic in the world has always been the power of a story. Good night.